7-win type teams. I can't wait to let 18 to 22-year-olds emotionally ruin me.
I made a call, to Vegas. I said, look, we actually need the favorite here.
Welcome again to Bear Bets Podcast. I am your host, the Bear, Chris Fallica, but you know that already. It's Friday. It's Bruce and the Bear style. Bruce Feldman will join me. Sammy P will join me. And Bruce, I guess after last weekend, the college football news never really stopped with a big firing on Sunday and a big contract extension during the week.
Yeah, big news, obviously, out of Happy Valley. James Franklin loses 3 in a row. They make a move, right? They're going to eat a big buyout. One of the obvious choices that you would have thought the AD at Penn State, Pat Kraft, would have had to at least make a call to is Curt Cignetti. Done an amazing job, coming off, obviously, the big win at Oregon. And he's, by the way, a Pittsburgh native. But that's off the table. He has gotten a huge deal. Good for him at IU. He certainly deserved it. He's worked miracles there. He goes through 2033. One thing I can tell you for certain, Bear, is a bunch of coaches are going to get paid because of this Penn State vacancy. Another one that I could see them reaching out to, who, by the way, would probably will have the same issue that Penn State would have to navigate if it gets further because of the playoff and the timing of being a playoff team. And that's Mike Elko at Texas A&M. I think there's some interest in him. He's done a really good job with the Aggies. They're undefeated. He's also, by the way, a Northeast guy from New Jersey. And so I think that he's been around high academic programs. I think there's a lot to like if you're a Penn State fan. But the obvious front runner here is a guy who knows Pat Kraft better than he knows any other coach, and that is Matt Rule. They worked together when Kraft was the AD at Temple, and Matt Rule led Temple to 2 of its only 3 in its 100-year history of 10-win seasons. They are really tight, as one industry source put it to me. Pat loves Matt, and Matt loves Pat. Now, one question here, if you're a Penn State fan, is you're saying, all right, he did a great job at Temple and did a really good job at Baylor, and he's done a pretty good job at Nebraska. But if James Franklin had a big game issue, what do we think of Matt Rule? He's lost 18 in a row against top 25 opponents. Bear, what do you think?
That's what I was going to say. I love Matt Rule and what he did, the job he did at Temple. But if the reason you're getting rid of James Franklin is because he's 4-21 against top 10 teams, and now you've got Matt Rule, who at Nebraska can't even beat a ranked team. That doesn't, as a Penn State fan, how would you kind of feel about that? And the observation that really you're making kind of a lateral move. I get the firing of James Franklin. I mean, it's hard to say, yeah, he should have been fired, but I think it reached a point where everything was kind of toxic and the move had to be made. I was surprised it was made mid-season, but everybody obviously has their reasons and why everything happened. One thing that I wanted to ask you about, Bruce, and hopefully I'm not throwing this on you and you actually have an opinion or a thought. Earlier in the week on Bear Bets on Monday, I had talked about maybe the kind of I was just kind of connecting dots and just throwing something out there. We all know Pagula and his connections to Penn State, Buffalo Bills owner, ton of money. Maybe he was the one responsible for kind of footing the bill on a lot of this buyout. And Joe Brady, obviously his offensive coordinator with the Bills, is a guy who was considered for jobs in the past and obviously going to be connected to some NFL jobs, probably the Titans are going to be connected with. I threw this idea out there that maybe Pagula was with the buyout, maybe in order to kind of give his guy a little ball, maybe give Joe Brady a little bit of a look here for the Penn State job. Do you think that's a realistic thing? Because then you talk to people in the college world who are like, yeah, I don't think Joe Brady wants to coach college football. I just think he wants to draw plays.
Yeah, and I got to know Joe Brady pretty well when he was at LSU, and I think that's accurate. I think he is closer to an NFL head coaching job. I mean, he's got the best quarterback probably in football that he works with, and a good offense, and they can make a run at a Super Bowl, which, by the way, puts them on a different timetable too. From everything I've heard from Joe is I think he wants to be in the NFL. I don't think he wants to be a college head coach. Now, there is one connection. He did work under Joe Moorhead when he was at Penn State as a young assistant, but I don't think that's enough for him to go, yeah, I want to be in the middle of that. I think he knows he's close to getting a head coaching job in the NFL, and I think that's the world he wants to live in.
Fair enough. I think you're going to see a ton of names out here, and I think I don't know. I just get the feeling, and again, based on nothing other than just me thinking, like, doesn't it seem too easy that the end game here is going to be Matt Rule, and it won't wind up being that?
It does, because it's, there's he was a walk-on at Penn State. He has these deep ties and really good relationship with the AD. The AD, obviously, strong personality, who made a bold move, and that's a big buyout they're eating to make a move on a guy who's consistently winning 10 games plus. But again, it is going to be Pat Kraft's hire. I also don't know how many other coaches are out there where you're like, oh, we said what we said about Rule struggles against top 25 opponents. Like, there's not a lot of other guys when you start to see, we both like Manny Diaz a lot, and he was a really good defensive coordinator there. Mm-hmm. Manny Diaz, wasn't much over 500 as the Miami head coach, right? And he's done a nice job at Duke, but I think to sit there and think him, or, I know people have mentioned a few other names, whether it's Brian Hartline, has done a terrific job as a receivers coach and now offensive coordinator at Ohio State. But that's a big job to turn to somebody for a first-time job, And again, another guy, Matt Campbell, think he's terrific, great eye for talent, really good at developing it, done wonders at Iowa State. But I think, again, are you sure he's going to come in? You're in the Big 12. You're not playing a Ohio State every season. You're not playing like the super heavyweights that you are. That's why I just think it's a way different ask, unless you're an SEC coach or unless you're another Big 10 coach, to see those kinds of teams. Even if you don't play them like 5 in a row, you still probably have teams that you're going to be punching up against who have better talent than you do.
And this cycle certainly is not done yet. It's been very active. We've got 2 games this week, and we got Wisconsin as a massive underdog against Ohio State. We got Florida is a 9.5 point favorite over Mississippi State, where basically you hear people say the next game they lose, Billy Napier is going to be fired. Can Luke Fickell survive the weekend, assuming Ohio State does what everybody thinks they're going to do Saturday night at Camp Randall? Does it feel like Napier and or Fickell, this might be their last games at their respective schools this week?
Yeah, it very well could be. I think it's just a matter of when it comes to Luke Fickell. They have gotten so bad. And again, they fired Paul Chryst, and he was winning like 75% of his games. Mm-hmm. Luke Fickell, it's getting worse in Madison. Billy Napier's situation is very interesting on a couple of fronts. Now, they play Mississippi State, which is far from one of the best teams they're going to play in the second half of the season. It's home. If they lose this game, I would be surprised if they didn't fire Billy Napier, because keep in mind, a lot of times ADs make moves right before bye weeks, and that's what Florida has next week. They have a bye week before they play Georgia. It just gives the administration a little more time and the players to get acclimated to big changes. If he wins this game, which I think he will, I'm not even sure they might make a move then. It's just like, because I suspect a bunch of people who are decision makers there are like, you know what, even if he knocks off a couple of ranked teams down the stretch and he gets us to 7-5, do we really have the confidence? Are we going to do this every year with Billy Napier? We like him. Clearly the team plays hard for him. It's just not working out. And last week, they go from a really good win a couple of weeks ago, and then last week they end up losing, and now we're back here again. That's why I wouldn't be surprised, win or lose, if they made a move. One other one to keep an eye on there. Hugh Freeze is in real trouble at Auburn. They're on a 3-game losing streak. The offense has been dreadful. They play Missouri. It's Missouri's first time on the road all season. If they lose that game to Missouri, I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn pulled the plug on that. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me at this point if they made a move, just because it's not going well at all with Auburn.
Yeah, 5-14 in SEC games under Hugh Freeze. So that's certainly not a sign that they're getting better from where they were prior to his arrival. One name that's always involved in the coaching search, the carousel at this time of year, is Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels have a game this week in Athens against Georgia. It's a massive revenge spot for the Bulldogs, who seem to week in and week out just continue to come back from double-digit deficits, all the offensive line injuries, run the ball and win games. And do you have any concern on Ole Miss after last week? Really wasn't a very inspiring performance against a pretty bad Washington State team.
Yeah, Bear, I watched that game pretty closely. It felt like either Ole Miss is just looking ahead. I remember they played Tulane a few weeks earlier, and they dominated Tulane. I think Tulane's honestly better than Washington State. It looked like they were up for that game. It did not look like they were looking at the Cougs with any kind of worry, but they should have been, because they struggled. Now, the issue to me is going to be Georgia has been so bad at rushing the passer. I think they have 6 sacks in 5 games against Power 4 opponents. They got to find a way to get pressure. If they don't, I could see Lane scheming them up and giving them some problems. But as you said, it's a revenge game. I got to think this is a game where the Dogs show up angry and they just say, hey, we're better than you. Because I don't think this is like as talented a team as the one that beat them last year in Oxford.
No. It's certainly not on the defensive side of the ball up front, but by far, this is nowhere near as good of a team. I just think, like, you look at the number of these types of games that Georgia has been in 13 times now at Sanford Stadium against a ranked opponent since 2017. Like, Kirby typically doesn't lose these games. They've won 12 of the 13. They lost the Alabama game a couple of weeks back, but the pedigree is there. And again, if you're looking at the spread and you're saying Ole Miss is a big dog, if you brought this up, I think last week, before the Oregon-Indiana game, since that 2022 college football championship game, 38 matchups of top 10 teams. The spread hasn't mattered in 37 of them. You've had 15 underdogs win outright in 37 time, or rather, 15 underdogs went outright, and then every other time except for once, the favorite wasn't an ATS loser like Texas Arizona State in the playoff last year. So if you like Ole Miss, just play them on the money line. If you like Georgia, lay the 7.5, and we'll move on.
Another big revenge game for the bluest of a blue blood, and that is also in the SEC. You got Tennessee, which really handled Alabama. Alabama's offense, I felt like it just looked awful. It was almost, they were bad in the bowl game against Michigan. They were really bad in Knoxville. This is a different Alabama offense. Obviously, Ryan Grubb has come in as the offense coordinator, reunites with Kalen DeBoer. It is fireworks in the pass game. Ty Simpson looks like a Heisman winner, playing with a ton of confidence. We saw the big perfect throw on 4th and 8 last week to rally them. Look, Joey Aguilar's playing well for Tennessee, but their secondary is not good. Do you feel like this is a big revenge game for the Tide?
I do, but I think it's more of a high-scoring game than anything else. I don't know. I don't know if I want to lay 8.5 here with the Tide, but at the same time, could I see Alabama winning by 10 to 17 points? Yeah, I could. I think this is a higher scoring game, and I would just I would love. I'm going to actually ask Mark Ingram on the show on Saturday about this. Like, you look at the gauntlet that Alabama has. Like we talked 3 weeks ago, you go to Georgia and the nation's longest home winning streak. The week after, you beat Vandy, who upset you last year as a 23.5 point favorite when you were number 1. Last week, you go to Missouri and survive against the Missouri defense that played well, and Simpson in that offense made plays when they needed to hang on and win that game. And now you got to go against Tennessee 4 weeks in a row, 4 ranked teams. That's like, it's a different deal. And people in the Big Ten and around the ACC and the Big 12 and the other conferences hate hearing it. But you look at Alabama's schedule, they got 6 teams on their schedule, including game teams they played, teams that are coming up, 6 teams that are currently ranked in the AP Top 25. Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon combined have 4. So it's like it's a different deal for how the rankings perceive these teams and the schedules and the strength of schedule. So I try and put myself in the position of being a Division I athlete right now. Like, how much gas do you have left in the tank after a 3-game gauntlet like that? So I think this is a higher scoring game. If Tennessee won, I wouldn't be surprised. If Alabama won by margin, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah, and you're talking about this gauntlet, and that doesn't even get into the playoff, is way longer than it ever was if you're fortunate enough to get to it. Bear, a team that has got a gauntlet of a schedule coming up and that they're in the middle of is actually Oklahoma. They got whipped last week in Red River. They're a 5.5 point road favorite at South Carolina. John Mateer valiantly came back. He looked really rusty. I was talking to our colleague Chris Peterson last week in studio, and he was like, I'm sure it was coming off the injury, but he was like, I don't think you saw a guy who just didn't have a lot of practice reps, it looked like, and that's where the rust added to it. Do you think he's getting a bounce back? Do you think the Sooners defense steps up? Because they got pushed around last week.
They did. I do think the Sooners defense will step up this week. What's weird is that they haven't forced a turnover this year against a Power 4 team, which is a pretty amazing. And you got a South Carolina defense on the other side, which has forced 11. So if Mateer's a little sloppy with that football and they still can't find a running game, it potentially is a ripe upset spot. Again, this appears to be one of those low-scoring games. You look at points per drive, Oklahoma 58th, South Carolina 61st amongst Power 4 teams. Like, this does not feel like it's going to be an offensive explosion. But it was kind of funny to see the comments about Brent Venables and schedules in the SEC compared to the old Big 12. Like, if you go back, Brent Venables is 1-7 in his last 8 games against Power 4 teams played in October or later. So, like, this is typically, remember last year they got off to I think it was a 5-1 start, and then they really struggled late in the year. So, like, I wonder, like, bringing Mateer back, I think last week almost did more damage than good, because now if you lose to Texas without John Mateer, it's like, all right, okay, we'll give him a playoff. I'm talking like playoff resume type deal. Like, the loss is more forgiven because you didn't have your starting quarterback. Now you had him in there, and it's like, okay, you played him, so you thought he was good to go. He looked terrible. Now you got a game against South Carolina, and you look at the rest of this. You got 5 more ranked teams coming up to end the year. Like, if they don't win today, like today or Saturday rather, 6-6 is on the table with all those difficult games they have coming up. So this is, I think, a massive game for Oklahoma. I do think they're better than South Carolina. I do think they'll get out of Williams-Rice with the win.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially from the perspective of the playoff committee on the Mateer factor, whether he's in or out in that Red River game. One of the games I'm most intrigued by is in South Bend. You have a Notre Dame team that got off to a shaky start, obviously lost to Miami and A&M, but has hit its stride. CJ Carr, the young quarterback, has been terrific. The defense has gotten better. And now you're playing a USC team that is coming off a big emotional win. Michigan came to the Coliseum, and USC stepped up, and offensive line looked really good. They were depleted. They had a walk-on running back, King Miller, run all over the Wolverines. Nobody had run over Michigan like that in like 9 games. And again, USC did it with a walk-on and a offensive line that often gets a lot of derision, and people just don't think it's very good. But Bear, the last time USC was on the road, you saw that Trojans team. They went to Illinois and they got pushed around. They had a bunch of mental mistakes. Now they're playing a Notre Dame team that I think is better than the Illinois team they played. Weather might not be great for USC. How do you think Matt Leinert's school handles going to South Bend in this big spot?
I don't know if I want to reveal any state secrets here, but I don't think Matt Leinart is very confident in his former school going on the road Saturday night in South Bend and winning that game. But I would tend to agree. It's just, you mentioned the game in Illinois. It's not a spot that USC has done well lately. They've lost 7 straight games as a road underdog, 0-4 under Lincoln Riley. Last 20 games as a road underdog, they've only pulled 2 upsets, and they're not even covering games. They're 5-15 against the number. So they come west to east as a dog and not expected to compete. They typically live up to that reputation. But I do wonder, though. You got USC, you got Notre Dame. Their secondary did allow some plays against Texas A&M. Can SC's offense do the same thing? Notre Dame's offensive line is a little beat up as well. Will that affect them? And this is kind of a loser-leave town game in terms of the college football playoff. A loss leaves Notre Dame with 3 losses and no chances to get a quality win. They'd have 3 quality losses, but they wouldn't have beaten anybody. And a USC loss leaves them with 2, and you still got a game against Oregon later in the year. So massive college football playoff leverage game here. I do like the Irish here. I do think they win. Although I am going to. I'm a stubborn guy. I usually like to see something before it happen before it does. It has to. You have to have done something in order to make me believe. USC hasn't won many of these games lately. Until they do, I can't back them here on the road.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Bear, where you are right now is a huge game in the Big 12. Holy War. You got BYU hosting a 3.5-point favorite, the Utes. Big rivalry game. The teams are very similar to me. You have two quarterbacks who are really good running quarterbacks, throw it pretty well, but are do most of their damage with their legs, and Devin Dampier and Bear Bachmeier. The thing that I like more in this matchup, obviously it's a home game for the Cougars, but also I feel like they have, if they need something in the passing game, their receivers are better than Utah's. And I think that might be the difference in this game. Are you with me, Bear? Or are you going the other way?
I'm on the other side here. I like Utah here. I think the Utes defense, I think that'll be a big deal here, being able to help contain Bachmeier and force him to try and get the ball to those receivers and take away his kind of the Tebow-ish type running ability that he has. It's been a bizarre. Like, this is a BYU team that's looking for their third straight win in this series, and it's funny. Like, I wonder, like, there was all these rumblings about Kyle Whittingham and retiring the last couple of years, and they lost to BYU. Like, I wonder if that's like in his back of his mind. Like, I can't retire and go out with a loss to BYU. So it's just a little funny aside. You got a team in BYU who's a home dog as a 6-0 team as well. Utah north of a favorite here. I think that Dampier game that he had against Texas Tech when he was hurt, I think we'll see a little bit of a different team Saturday night. They look much better against Arizona State offensively. Offensively against a bad UCLA, that UCLA game, they were great. They've shown signs. I do agree with you that they don't have the skill guys on the outside that BYU has, but I'm not sure the game that we're going to see tomorrow night will really lead into that ultimately being the difference. I did lay the 3.5 with Utah here Saturday.
Okay, Bear, let's get to the walkthrough where we bring in our favorite, Sammy P, who always got some good gems. A big game in the Big 12. Arizona State, which actually got blown out last week, but they didn't have Sam Leavitt, their standout quarterback. Now they're going to get a visit from Texas Tech, who has steamrolled everybody. Nobody's been closer than 2 touchdowns. Sammy P, I know you have some good news for ASU fans about their star quarterback.
Not only is Sam Leavitt probable, he's looking good at practice from what we've been told. Guys in Vegas have been on this all week. When this number opened, it was 11.5. Of course, Leavitt did not play in Salt Lake City. The number, though, after he played at practice Monday, went down to 9.5. And I was texting with guys all over town like we always do. What's the number if he's healthy? And all I heard was 7. Bear, current number, Texas Tech -7.
Yeah, everything we had heard about Leavitt from last week was that not necessarily precautionary, but the weather in Utah had a lot to do with that. It's interesting. I mean, Texas Tech's got on the road a couple times this year, shut down the Utah offense with an injured Dampier, went on the road, just absolutely dominated Houston. So we'll see if that defense can travel against an ASU offense, which has been a little bit hit and miss this year.
Yeah, on the front of that defense with Texas Tech, I mean, they have been dominant. They spent a lot of money on some transfer portal guys. One of those guys, Skylar Gill-Howard, who's been a rock in the middle of the defense, he left the game last week against Kansas early. I'm reporting that he is expected to be out for not just the rest of the regular season. If they make the playoff, they hope he will be ready to go. He had surgery on Thursday on his ankle. The good news is A.J. Holmes, another transfer from Houston, he came in last week and had 2.5 sacks. So they have depth, but it's a little thinner now. More news on the injury front and also with a quarterback. Cade Klubnik at Clemson. What do you got, Sammy P?
We were taping Bear Bets on Thursday. I had a couple missed calls from mutual friend of Bears and mine. We call him Vegas Rick. 3 missed calls during our taping. That's never good to have 3 missed calls. So I get off the set, step into the hallway. What's up? He said, Klubnik's hurt. Tell the Bear. I'm like, okay, here we go. The line was 9.5 during Bear Bets. When we got done with Bear Bets, the line was 5.5. They don't know if he's out, but they're betting it, Bear, like Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik is not right.
It sure looks like it's trending towards him not playing. It's funny because this game was so far off my radar last week, and then I saw a report earlier in the week of Dabo talking about Klubnik. Yeah, he could. We expect him to play. He'll be fine, like right after the game, and then sure enough, as the week goes on, shockingly, it appears indeed that he is not fine. And a move like this just does not happen, I think, without there being some pretty good intel that Kate Klubnik was not going to play. And look, I liked SMU. Plus, I wish I would have played SMU plus the 10 earlier in the week. We've seen Clemson struggle against a lot of teams. Obviously, North Carolina, BC, two terrible teams, the outlier. But yeah, too much of a move now. I didn't hop in, so I missed the boat. So I'm just going to sit here and pass. But yeah, I don't think Klubnik's going to play.
Sammy, you got some eyes on public underdogs this week. What do you like?
I've heard this from multiple bookmakers in Vegas. The two teams that are ringing in the ears of the public. Number one is USC. The public thinks that's a lot of points against Notre Dame, yet the line has continued to climb. I don't know that we get to 10, but we're close. This number was 7.5 early in the week, and sharp money has driven it up. The other one, Bear, I know you're happy to hear this one. The public cannot stop betting Ole Miss. That's a lot of points for an undefeated team against Georgia.
Yeah, you're looking at my Circa Friday Football Invitational picks right now. I got Georgia actually at -7, which is great as my best bet in that contest. There's a little giveaway right now for everybody who's listening to my contest card. But you hit it on it. You see 7.5 in a lot of places, undefeated team. A lot of the public's automatically going to say, undefeated team, whatever they are, 6th in the country, getting so many points. Got to hop on them. It doesn't necessarily work that way. You look at last year, there were 4 instances where a team 6-0 or better were a road underdog of at least 7 points in the regular season. All of them lost. They lost by an average of 29 points a game. You get rid of the COVID 2020 year where there really weren't fans in the stands and just a weird year to begin with. Last 10 years, 16 times you've had 6-0 or better, 7-point dog or more. Those teams are 1-15 outright, with the Michigan win against Ohio State a couple of years ago, the lone win. So outright upsets typically do not happen. I like Georgia. Look, Georgia's a team that, to quote our good buddy Bill Raftery, they've got onions. They double-digit down twice. Tennessee double-digit down against Auburn. Came back and won on the road. Offensive line injuries doesn't matter. They run the ball well, and I think this Ole Miss team is a team that is not as good defensively as they've been. I think the Bulldogs get a big revenge win here.
Yeah, as you said, Washington State gave them all they could handle, and that's not a very good Washington State team. Let's get to the 2-minute drill where we just whip through everything. Bear, I know you saw Texas have a big win last week in Red River. I know it caught your eye that they got a big special teams return touchdown as well. So now, where do you have the Longhorns this weekend?
Well, Sammy and I were on the Longhorns last week, and that was good as Jeff Banks special teams hooked us up with the big punt return for touchdown that really sealed the deal. But trouble for Texas lately has been the week after Red River. Under Sark, they haven't covered the week after Oklahoma. 0-4-1 against the number. Lost a couple of those games outright. I remember that they were a big favorite against Kansas. I think that was under Tom Herman, though, that they lost. Going back to the Tom Herman era, 0-7-1 last 8 years, week after Texas against the number. 3 outright losses. And we know Mark Stoops and that Kentucky team, they battled some teams defensively. They're pretty good. Pulled the big upset last year against Ole Miss. So not a gimme that you necessarily want to go on the road here and lay close to 2 touchdowns.
I did bring up that stat too, Bruce, on Austin Radio this week. Bear stat, including the Tom Herman portion, and the host basically heard Tom Herman and went, He did not want to hear that name in Austin.
It was crazy. Even before he got fired, the people who are usually out on the head coach once they get fired at UT were out on Tom Herman like the year before. So I could see why that reaction caused that reaction. There's one game where there is an unranked team that is favored over a ranked team. What do you guys think of that?
I like Duke in this game. I liked it obviously better at 1.5 than the 2.5 it's moved to in most places right now. But you've had 6 instances this year where you've had the unranked team favored over a ranked team, and 5 out of the 6 times the unranked team is won. So pay attention to the number to the right of the team and not the little ranking to the left. And the situation here, I think, is good for Duke. Georgia Tech is going to be down Stone, one of their better defenders. Amari Harvey, one of their better defensive backs, is down. And if you kind of look at some of the Duke offensive numbers, they had the 5 turnovers in that loss to Illinois. They've turned it over once since then. And I like drilling down for like, how do you do against Power 4 teams and Power 4 teams head to head? Some of their offensive numbers in terms of yards per play, scoring percentage, touchdown percentage, stuff like that. Duke is like in the top 4, along with like SC and Notre Dame and Indiana and all these great offenses. So I don't think people really realize how good Mensa and that Duke offense has been. It's going to be a big test on Saturday for Georgia Tech to get out of Wallace Wade with the win.
One of the bigger bets I made this season, Bruce, Duke against Illinois. It makes me want to rip my hair out. All they did in that game was turn the ball over. Since that game, they've been unbelievable.
Yeah, that game, Mensa's interceptions weren't bad. It was the fumbles that got him in. And usually we don't keep track of the fumbles on like these things, but it's like the touchdown interception ratio we notice. It was the fumbles that really did them in, and then they got blown out of a otherwise close game. Guys, one last thing to really Penn State has been like the epicenter of college football since last weekend with James Franklin being fired. What do you think happens on the field now that they have Terry Smith taken over as the interim?
Well, one of the bets that I had put in the column and put out on Bear Bets was Iowa's team total under 21.5. I think the Penn State defense, as the year goes on with Jim Knowles' ski, remember, this was a thing at Ohio State a couple of years back in Knowles' first year. Took a while to really comprehend it and develop and come to play quickly. Later in the year, I think it's kind of the same thing that Penn State's going through right now. They still have really good players. I don't think Iowa's going to score a ton of points, but it is interesting that if you look at these games, +3, -3, and with Iowa and Kirk Ferentz, you go back the last 22 games. It goes back quite a few years. 2019, they've been involved in 22 games where the spread's been between a field goal either way. Iowa's 19-3. That's outright. They've only lost 3 of these games. So people like to maybe use a verbal crutch. Kirk Ferentz, one of the best coaches out there, one of the best coaching staffs out there. Games like this kind of indicate that. But you know what's funny too, Bruce? I think you'll appreciate this. Penn State hasn't had a losing record after 7 games since 2004. Remember that 6-4 game against Iowa? That was Game 7, 2004. So a little bit of a coincidence here that the Penn State's playing Iowa in Game 7, looking to avoid a 3-4 record. One
other thing to keep in mind, Drew Aller is out for the rest of the year. So Ethan Grunkemeyer, who stepped in, now he's got to be the guy. How does that go against Iowa's experienced defensive coordinator who's so good?
Well, this line on the look ahead was Penn State -10. Now we're Iowa -3. So the adjustment has certainly been made. And Bear, did I just hear you say, don't worry, Penn State, better luck next year? You didn't just do the next year thing again to Penn State, did you, with Jim Knowles? Not
at all. I mean, next year is the year, right? Right. This year was supposed to be the year after the semifinal loss, with the one drive away from playing for the title. Like this was going to be the year, right? Where they're the top 10 team that finally breaks through and get those wins. Yeah, unfortunately, didn't happen. But I'd be surprised if Penn State licked the stamp and mailed the rest of the season in with games certainly against Ohio State and Indiana, and a road game against Iowa on Saturday. So that'll do it for this week. Hope everybody learned a little something. Hopefully, a little extra money in your pocket, educate you a little bit. Thanks for watching us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. For Sammy, for Bruce, I'm Bear. Less you bet, more you lose when you win.